Yeah, Weege Show here. We got a fleet of bikes brought to you by Race Tech. It's raining, so this is going to make it easier to wash the bikes. We're going to use a little bit of Mother Nature and a little bit of kid power. I wasn't at the race this weekend. We were at Yamaha's Blue Crew event, a 2-day event at Club MX, and I'll show you what that's like right here. Yeah, welcome to another episode of the most spoiled kid in motocross. I did a Weege Show yesterday with the Honda CRF E2, the electric play bike, pit bike. Today, my kid is getting to learn how to ride a 65 for the first time. And you know that's the big number. 65 equals clutch and shifting gear. So this morning he had never done it before. We get to ride the 50 track here at Club MX. This is a cool thing that Yamaha does. Blue Crew Ride Day here at Club. So they have a motocross day. If you own a Yamaha and you've signed up for their contingency, coming out and ride at the big track here at Club MX. They got a sand track over there. Kids can ride the 50 track. And in this case, learn to ride a YZ65. They also have one later in the week at Randy Hawkins' place. Randy Hawkins owns the Ampro Yamaha, the factory GNCC team, and they'll have an off-road equivalent of this a little later in the week. So it's something new that they're doing this year in the month of March, opening up Club and Randy Hawkins' place to motocross and off-road guys. And that's how I'm spending my Seattle Supercross weekend. Shout out to Mike and Mike from Club and Mike from Yamaha for teaching my kid better than I could how to use a clutch and how to use gears. Yeah, so after riding the 65, and it did rain yesterday at Club, did your bike get muddy?
What?
Did your bike get muddy?
Yeah.
Because you rode in the rain?
Uh-huh.
But what was it like doing a clutch for the first time?
Hard.
Yeah, it was hard. But what do you think of the bike overall now that you got used to it?
Really good.
All right, this is a waste of your time in the Weege Show. Let's talk Seattle Supercross, brought to you by Race Tech and their Gold Valves. Your suspension will be plusher, better bottoming resistance, more traction, made and engineered in the USA. The real analysis is going to come from Kellen Brauer out in Seattle here in just a moment. I'm going to talk about really just one thing here, one thing. Chase Sexton. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I'm going to report this back to our guy, Jason Thomas, former pro, and he said on our podcast, myself and Mathis a couple weeks ago, he's trusting the front tire too much. You can go very fast by doing certain things on a motorcycle, but you're on that edge, and he is literally doing that. He is on the edge of that front tire. Where Sexton crashed this time, I mean, multiple times throughout the main, you saw him washing the front. Kellen will talk to you about it a little bit from what he saw being in the stadium. But so many of these things, what does Sexton say when he goes down? He said the same thing in Tampa when he went down on the whoops. He said it all the way back to his rookie 450 year. He's like, I suddenly don't have traction. I suddenly don't have traction. And we can talk about bike setup. We can even talk a little bit about technique. Sexton looks awesome on a bike, don't get me wrong. Or maybe he's just asking to go faster in areas where you can't go that fast repeatedly over and over. You can go faster in a corner if you drive in harder, right? If you're on the edge of traction in the front wheel. But if you get it wrong once, we all know that's how it works in racing. I mean, it's literally the most basic concept of racing. You want to know why Ricky Carmichael was the GOAT? It all comes down to this. He figured out, better than any racer ever, how to be on the edge yet not crash. Go fast yet not crash. That is it. I mean, I could go in there and talk to my wife, who doesn't know anything about racing, and she'll tell you that's pretty much how it works, right? How fast can you go without crashing, be it in a car or in a motorcycle? And that's what Sexton is still trying to find. It's unbelievable that it keeps happening like that. Did you see the crash?
Yeah.
This morning?
Uh-huh.
What did he do?
He went onto the single into the corner and then and the front end tucked and he fell. Yep. Yeah, it's happened far too many times. All right, we got to get back to washing bikes. Thanks to Race Tech, and I'll send it to Kellen Brauer out in Seattle. And I said I was only going to talk about Sexton, but one other thing. These long main events, I have not seen Supercross races won and lost the way they're won and lost these days. I'm going to flip your bike back. Because of the longer mains and the way the tracks break down and the way lines change throughout, grab the stand and put it on the other side, and then we're going to lean the bike the other way, and then you can get the bottom of it. If you can get through this gap, come around here. Because the tracks change so much and they have to figure out lines. Now here's your problem. You know that hose is buried underneath the stand. So grab that wand, grab the wand for the pressure washer. Yeah, there you go. Now it's not trapped underneath. All right, get that thing out of there. Pull this over to this side, and then I'm gonna drop the bike. And then you'll be able to wash the bottom. These are the lessons I wish my dad had taught me. How to wash a motorcycle. Okay, so because these races and tracks break down and they have to find lines, like I said on Friday, it's different
than it used to be, where whoever was fastest in the first 5 or 8 laps of a main event was going to be the fastest guy. I mean, we have seen in multiple mains, even the last 2 weeks in a row, where Webb and Tomac have gone at it, and they passed each other back and forth, and you think you know which guy has the edge, and then it actually flips. And it was the inverse of what happened last week, this week, where this time Tomac gets the better of Webb, but they both passed each other. They both seemed to have it, and Tomac said it really was because he was a mess with his lines at the beginning. Then he figured out that awesome outside to in slingshot down the left side of the whoops. It was spectacular how much speed he had there, but it took him a while to figure that out. And he had a rhythm that maybe wasn't as fast, but he said it was repeatable every lap. That's what he said in the press conference. And that kind of race intelligence of letting the track come to you, and I don't have to worry who's passing me right now, I'll figure it out. We have not seen Supercross races won consistently that way in the past. But we've entered the era of 20-minute mains, the era of 4 strokes and tires that tear these tracks up. Bike's looking good, dude. And maybe we just have to realize that that's how Supercross is won and lost now. This is year 6 of the 20-minute main, and I'm for it. I mean, I think it's great. I mean, it leads to last couple of weeks. Just give an example. The first laps are furious and unbelievable, and then things start to tighten up for the stretch run at the end. And one other thing, even though I said I was only going to mention one thing, we're on to number 3. Cooper Webb. I spent a lot of time on this show giving him credit for how he dissects races, and I say it's not something that the fans can always see, because it's not him jumping something crazy or blowing your mind with whoop speed or corner speed or anything like that. It's a more subtle way. So we compliment him a lot, but I do have to say he has a liability. This is how Webb does his races when he does well. Starts up front, goes here, then the middle of the race is a lull, and then he figures it out late. It's worked out many times because the figuring out late bails him out, but the mid-race stuff, that was the problem last week, right? Sexton got around him, he couldn't get to him. In the end, points-wise, it turned out okay, but Sexton still did beat him. And this week, the damage that Tomac did at mid-race, Webb was better at the beginning and passed him. Tomac got too far away. Webb ended up 5 or 6 seconds back due to some mistakes. And once he finally gathered it up and was ready to put in that Cooper Webb charge, look, he can't be perfect with those blitzing last laps every single time. He leaves himself no room for error. If he has even one bad lap in the final 5 minutes, he's too far back and he can't afford that. So the mid-race issue for Webb reared its head this time. Boy, I had a lot to talk about. You gonna have fun on that?
Yeah.
All right. You can win this bike. Subscribe to Racer X, the CRF E2. Subscribe to Racer X and take a shot at winning the electric bike. You got to put a helmet on. We'll be right back.
Yeah, it is the Weege Show coming to you here at Lumen Field after another, man, just crazy night in this 450 class. 250 class, I mean, pretty standard. I mean, Jet Lawrence winning, what do you expect? But the 450 class, yes, Eli Tomac gets his 50th career win, but beyond that, it just felt like there was battling everywhere, all night, all throughout the race. I think maybe the end, it stifled a little bit, but gosh, this 450 class just continues to provide week after week after week. So to take you through it a little bit, obviously off the start, Kevin Moranz gets the whole shot. He's got Chase Sexton right behind him, and then Sexton passes him on the second lap. Moranz goes up into the tough blocks. Talked to Kevin after the race, and he was like, he totally felt fine in the lead. It wasn't like a freak out thing or anything like that. He just made a small misjudgment and jumped to the left of the track, and then was up in the tough blocks before he even knew it. So unfortunately, that, you know, kind of ruined a great start for him, but he was okay with the result in the end because he was pretty happy to get up front and was stoked about, you know, things like that coming together. So that's cool. From there, though, Chase takes the lead and leads for a little while. He had started to pull away, then he stalls and then collects himself, pulls back away again, and then it's just like beating a drum. It just feels like it happens at the halfway mark every time with Chase, and he just, I don't even know. This time, for several laps in a row, he was making this little mistake where he was coming into that section where he eventually crashed, and the front tire would start to slide into the ruts, and then he just kind of plant and go over the little single, and then it just was one step too far one time. Front tire washes, knifes in, and it's just like such a weird little crash, like up over the bars, flies over the next little single. I feel like that's been Sexton's kind of like MO, though, is these weird little crashes. They're not the big ones that we normally see. They're weird little ones, and that was another weird little one. And man, how much different does this championship look if he holds on and wins that thing? Obviously, it's still close between Webb and Tomac, who are now tied. Tomac gets his 50th career win. No points in it anymore. We're going into the final 6 rounds of this championship. Dead heat, dead even between those guys. But for Sexton, I think that's the nail in the coffin. It might have already been in anyway, but you can't crash away another win, another opportunity. Now I think he's a full race distance down, or just about. And what are you gonna say about that? I guess it's just the way it's been for him. But anyway, after that, Tomac takes the lead, and for a little bit, it looked like Webb actually had some areas that he was gaining on him. Webb was still tripling onto the tabletop in the first rhythm section, whereas Eli was going roll and then over table, triple single, which was he was the only guy basically doing that line all day long. Very, very odd situation, I felt like, but that's what he was doing. And I felt like Webb was like starting to reel him in, starting to find some places. He was also starting to blitz the whoops, which is something that Eli was doing the whole main event and was working out tremendously well for him. And all these trucks rolling and everybody's trying to get out of here in a hurry here tonight. But man, it felt like we were gonna have another battle between those two guys, and then it just felt like Eli was like, oh wait, he's getting closer, I'm gonna wick it up a little bit more. Coop started making some mistakes, little issues here and there. He just, I don't know, knife a front end here and then slide it out here and do this. And he also couldn't get the triple in the rhythm section after the finish line jump for several laps in a row for some reason. He would go double, triple, and then double single. And Eli just opened up a gap and eventually won the race. So yeah, no points in it between those two now. And this is gonna be one heck of a dogfight down to the end of this championship. And hey, look, we got a Triple Crown coming up next in Glendale. We got a weekend off, of course, coming up, but then the Triple Crown after that in Glendale. And gosh, this is just gonna be so fun. Like, as a fan of this sport, we really need to soak up this moment. And I know Weege says this a lot on the Weege show, but we don't get these types of title fights very often. In fact, more often than not, we get somebody that is starting to run away by this point. And last year in the championship, it was Tomac that was starting to put lots of points on everybody else by this point. It wasn't that he was just winning, he was winning races, and Anderson was making mistakes, or whoever else was behind him was making mistakes, and Tomac was chunking points ahead. That's not the case. It seems like they find a way to finish near each other or right behind each other, Webb and Tomac that is, and now we have nothing in it in this championship fight. Now, coming into this race, I had said, and I think Weege and a couple other people had said, like, boy, anybody could still win. And it still feels like that because the race was pretty close throughout. I don't know how much it was shown on TV, but by the end, I mean, the top 6 guys, I think they dropped AP and AC a little bit, but the top 6 guys were 2 straightaways apart maybe, and at one point they were all on the same straightaway with about like 7 minutes to go or something like that. So it wasn't exactly a walkaway victory. It wasn't like Webb, yarded guys behind him either. In fact, Barcia started catching him by the end. But maybe this is the tipping point as we get into a break here where these guys come back from the break and it is just these 2 guys down the stretch, right? We always see at some point it happens. The title guys take control of the series, and maybe it's just a little bit later this year, just a fraction later in the championship, where normally it's after Daytona or around 10 or whatever, but now we're going into round 12, and I think finally we might see a bit of a change here. But we'll see, because the Triple Crown throws a wrench into the whole plans, and that's what's coming up next in Glendale. So maybe we have things just upside down and topsy-turvy again. Like I said, 250 class was pretty straightforward. Jet Lawrence was fast all day, fast in the main event. It was a little bit weird, obviously, with the McAdoo and Heath situation in the heat race where they got together. In the end, kind of a racing incident. I think they're both going to have different sides of that situation, and I don't think they've had words with each other yet, so I'm not sure what was said in the press conference either, because obviously they would have sat next to each other. But yeah, it just one of those things that kind of happened, and Jet and Cameron, to their credit, both rebounded quite well from it, and Jet didn't blow him up a couple corners after when he tried to repass him for that position. So I think that shows a little bit of maturity, because some guys might freak out a little bit more in that situation and do something that would really be a detriment to their championship. But he settled down and was like, look, I just got to get through this heat race, and in the end wins the main event. So the Hunter and Jet duel that they were talking about, Jet goes back ahead by 1 win over his brother Hunter, and I mean, he's in total control of this championship. But in the same breath of the 450 race, the 450 championship having a Triple Crown next week or 2 weeks from now, Jet's not very good at Triple Crowns either. So maybe this is a situation where a Triple Crown throws a little bit of a wrench in the plans again for him. I don't know. I can't find a way to describe that Jet Lawrence might not win this title. It just feels like it's a foregone conclusion. I don't think that like Hampshire and McAdoo want to believe that yet, but I really do feel that that's where we're already headed. With 4 rounds of the championship left to go, there's still a Triple Crown, there's still an East-West, 2 East-West showdowns, so they only have 1 regular race left. But it feels like Jet's championship to basically lose at this point. So not a whole lot going on in the pits. We got a bunch of people in the media scrum. Trying to think of what I can, talk about from that a little bit. Not a whole lot really was said aside from the track was gnarly. It actually ended up being a pretty good track here today, all things considered, because when we got here this morning, it was pretty muddy, it was pretty sloppy, and then they pulled the tarps off. The transitions of the jumps were really gnarly, like there was a lot of water, and the Dirtworks track crew did a pretty solid job of just kind of cleaning that up all day long and making sure that by the end of the night, it was ready. It was Seattle, but it was not a mudder. And after all the talk about that coming into this weekend, I think a lot of people, especially in that media scrum, a lot of people were like, man, that actually ended up totally fine for what it was. So yeah, I mean, pretty good race by the end of it. And what else is there to say other than let's sit back and enjoy the last 6 races of this 450 championship. It is going to be unbelievably fun. 2 guys with 2 Monster Energy Supercross championships each, looking for their 3rd. Eli Tomac wins his 50th career Supercross, now tied with James Stewart for 2nd all-time. Only 3 riders have made it to the half-century mark in Supercross wins, and Eli Tomac is the 3rd man to etch his name on that list. Pretty cool. I think that's a pretty cool story for sure. But that's a wrap on Seattle. Huge thanks to Race Tech Suspension for backing us here on the Weege Show, and thanks to Weege for throwing it to me. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one, and we'll see you guys in a couple weeks after the break. Glendale coming up in 2 weeks. We'll see you guys then.